still alive?
Yeah.
Is your dad still alive?
Yeah, allegedly.
Positively, however, it's made Joe a better person.
Because I watched. My real father was crazy. He was like a psychotic person.
It strangely became a TikTok beef.
You lied about me. Your father. You owe me a big apology.
Joe Rogan is no stranger to controversial and candid discussions, but one topic he avoided for years was his relationship with his father. Joseph Rogan Sr., the comic-turned-podcast giant, kept his family life mostly under wraps, especially when it came to his biological father. However, that all changed on episode 118 of the Joe Rogan Experience in 2015, when Joe opened up about the tumultuous relationship he had with his dad. What followed was a public family conflict that escalated into a media spectacle. A TikTok video from Joe's father and half-sister made waves, claiming Joe's allegations were false, demanding an apology from his son, and offering a very different portrayal of their family history. This contentious drama not only captured the attention of Rogan's millions of fans but also sparked a deep dive into Joe's troubled childhood, early life, and his perception of his father. Joe Rogan was born on August 11, 1967, in Newark, New Jersey, to Joseph Rogan Sr. and his mother Susan LMO. As a young boy, Joe looked up to his father, thinking of him as a hero. His father, a police officer, was an imposing figure, and like many children, Joe initially idealized him. "I think every kid thinks their dad is awesome, especially if your dad is like an imposing figure," Joe said in later interviews. But when Joe was just 5 years old, his parents' marriage ended in divorce, a traumatic event that marked the beginning of his fractured relationship with his father. After the split, Joe and his mother moved to San Francisco, where she remarried. Joe gained a stepfather but lost touch with his biological father, who continued to live in New Jersey. For years, Joe had no contact with his father, as their lives drifted in opposite directions. His father's absence, however, didn't fully settle with Joe until he reached his teenage years. Realizing the truth about his father, in his late teens, Joe began to realize that his father wasn't the hero he once thought he was. By this time, Joe's perceptions of his father began to shift, and what he remembered about his father's behavior was far from heroic. In a 2015 interview with Rolling Stone, Joe shared that his childhood memories of his father were brief violent flashes of domestic violence. He clarified, "I don't want to complain about my childhood, but it was confusing. He was just a very violent, scary guy." Joe recalled his father's violent tendencies, including frequent physical altercations. The brutality extended beyond Joe's mother. He recounted an incident where his father beat his cousin, grabbing him by the hair and throwing him across the room. These memories remained with Joe for years, influencing his view of his father and ultimately leading him to push his father out of his life. The reluctance to discuss his father, despite the trauma Joe experienced, he never discussed his father publicly for many years, even though his background was likely an influential factor in shaping his career and public persona. For the first 4 years of the Joe Rogan Experience podcast, he never once brought up his biological father. However, in episode 118 of the podcast, Joe finally opened up about his father in what was an uncharacteristic moment of vulnerability. In an emotional rant, he revealed the depth of the damage caused by his father. "My real father was crazy. He was like a psychotic person," Joe explained, exposing the dark side of his upbringing. Joe went on to detail some of the worst things his father did, including physical violence toward Joe's mother and cousin. "He beat my mother. He beat the hell out of my cousin. He was a big guy, a crazy cop from New Jersey," Joe said, recounting his early memories of fear and confusion. He added that his father taught him harmful lessons, such as how to be emotionally cold and never to show weakness. "When I was 5, I had a fight with one of my cousins. I told my dad what happened, and he said, 'Did you cry?' I said no. He said, 'Good. Don't ever cry.'" Joe admitted that this advice led him to become more aggressive, often fighting others unnecessarily. The silent response from Joe's father: at the time of Joe's revelations, he was already a rising star. But his father remained largely silent about the accusations. When approached by the press, Joseph Rogan Sr. only offered a vague response, stating, "I don't talk about people the way they talk about me. That's not in my DNA. What's gone is gone." Despite his refusal to address the specific allegations, Joe's father clearly knew what his son had said and the impact it had. Joe's revelations marked a critical moment in his personal story. Not only had he been carrying around painful memories of his father for years, but his father's silence only deepened Joe's feelings of abandonment and rejection. Joe's distaste for reunion. In the years that followed, Joseph Rogan Sr. moved on with his life, starting a new family. He had 2 twin daughters, which made them Joe's half-sisters. They eventually reached out to Joe, attempting to reconnect and get to know the brother they had heard about. In an interview with the Daily Mail, Joe's half-sister revealed that their father had first mentioned Joe when he was 19. She described Joe as a comedian at the time, and they were curious about his life. They reached out to him, hoping to connect. However, Joe's response was cold and dismissive. He referred to his father as a sperm donor, making it clear that he had no interest in reuniting with the man who had been absent for so long. His half-sister recounted how they backed off after receiving Joe's unkind response. The TikTok beef, family drama resurfaces years later, after Joe's podcast grew into a cultural phenomenon and he became one of the most powerful voices in media. His father and half-sister resurfaced in the public eye. In a TikTok video that quickly went viral, Joseph Rogan Sr. and his half-sister called Joe out for the public accusations he had made about their father. "Joe, you lied about me," Joseph Rogan Sr. said in the video. "You owe me a big apology." The 81-year-old man looked directly into the camera, challenging his son. "You couldn't handle me. How could I get away with that? I beat up kids and women? You lied. We all know you lied." Joseph Rogan Sr. went on to accuse his son of being ungrateful and claimed that Joe had fabricated stories about their family for personal gain. "You have all the money, but you don't have 2 balls, he said, a statement that left many viewers baffled. His half-sister also chimed in, defending their father. She described how great of a father he had been to her and her sibling. "My father has never been violent," she declared. "Joe didn't get to grow up with him, but we did, and he was great to us." This TikTok video reignited the old family feud, with many viewers questioning the timing and motivations behind the sudden public airing of grievances. Critics noted that the video seemed to coincide with Joe's rise to fame and wealth, leading some to speculate that Joe's father and half-sister were more interested in his success than they were in repairing the relationship. Joe's response and reflection. While Joe's father and half-sister publicly doubled down on their accusations, Joe remained resolute in his stance. During a podcast interview shortly after the TikTok video went viral, Joe chose not to engage directly with his family's claims. When asked about the situation, he responded, "I don't talk about my father. I've been through enough of that." Joe's reluctance to discuss the topic further was telling, as it reflected the deep emotional scars left by his father's abuse and abandonment. "It's made me a better person, though," Joe reflected, as he described how his painful childhood experiences shaped his approach to fatherhood. "I watch my kids, I communicate with them, and I treat them like I'm not just their dad but also their friend," Joe shared. "I didn't have a good childhood, so it's important for me to be a good dad to them." The complex legacy of Joe Rogan's father. The drama surrounding Joe Rogan's father reveals much about the complexities of family dynamics, the long-lasting effects of abuse, and the role money and fame can play in reshaping relationships. For years, Joe lived with the scars of his father's violence, and even as he achieved unprecedented success, the wounds remained. His decision to publicly confront his father was not just an act of venting frustration, it was part of Joe's ongoing quest for self-understanding and healing. While his father and half-sister may have hoped to rewrite the narrative of their family's history, Joe's response serves as a reminder that sometimes, the truth is far more complicated than we would like to admit. His refusal to engage with his family in the way they wanted signals that some wounds are not meant to be healed for the sake of a public image, but instead, for personal growth and closure.
Still alive? Yeah. Is your dad still alive?
Yeah, allegedly.
Positively, however, it's made Joe a better person.
Because I watch my kids I watch them, I talk to them, I communicate with them. I didn't have a good childhood, so for me it's important to be a good dad. Talking to them, treating them like I'm not just their dad, but also I'm their friend and I care about them.